Hello and welcome to Do the Right Thing, your weekly writing prompt podcast. I'm Alexandra.
And I'm Jarvis.
Jarvis and I were aspiring writers with one simple and very common problem. We never actually took the time to sit down and write.
Exactly. So to solve this issue, we are issuing a challenge. Each week, we sit down and write a complete short story using 3 or 4 randomly generated words.
Then we come on the podcast, we read a story, we talk about what we learned in reading it, and then we talk about the wonderful stories sent in by you listeners.
Exactamundo. We're simply here to help you do the right thing. A Doof Media production.
So we got stuff to talk about.
Yeah. So maybe you've noticed that we have not had a podcast in a couple of weeks, and believe it or not, we have very good reason for it. I know on my end, I've been doing a lot of summer classes, which is taking up all of my time. And I think on your end, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I've been in the process of moving, as well as some pretty crippling depression, in addition to heartbreak.
Yes.
It's kind of been a lot recently. You know, I'm medicated, which is good, especially the Adderall, because it gives me dopamine, which makes me less awful brained. However, I took it too late the other day, and I was like twitchy the entire night. Like, I understand now why meth heads get all twitchy. It's because it felt like unbearably uncomfortable to stay still. So now I know.
And I guess it's
I meth light too late in the day.
And I guess it's because you took it so late that your body is being hit with the Adderall. So
it's just like I was trying to lie still in bed so I could go to sleep, but yeah, my whole body was like, actually, we should be running right now.
Oh no!
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Yeah. That's probably an awful feeling.
It kind of was, but it's fine. Anyway, so that's just like one of the little episodes that I've had going on here. So yeah, and I'm bouncing around between Airbnbs and yeah, you've been flooded with work. So the point is that
flooded with work and depression.
Yeah, and we've been flooded with a lot of things, and I'm not on the other side of that yet either. And doing this podcast, I love it. But I don't think I'm coordinated enough to do it well or consistently or well. And we apologize for how that's affected our writers.
Yeah, just to dedicate that time to it, because I mean, yeah, this podcast is such a joy to make, but it is requiring about 5 to 6 hours to do during a given week. And it's crazy to see, like, when you do get really busy, when you do have like a lot of stuff going on, get like sitting down for 30 minutes to a write isn't terribly hard, but sitting down for 6 hours to write, read, and talk is a pretty daunting task when you have like something due every day, and when you're just not really feeling it. Like, I know depression can make us feel in a lot of times.
Yeah. I also just have practical issues. I'm keeping a lot of my stuff at a friend's place, and so I left my microphone there, and it takes an hour to get over there. So it's just like, an hour to get back. Anyway, point is, stuff's added up. So yeah, this is all leading up to, we're going to be, I think, stopping doing the podcast for at least a while, if not, I don't want to say the word forever, but it's definitely
or the word indefinite.
Yeah. Of just, we've had some ideas of stuff that we might want to do, like doing this once a month, perhaps, and then gathering up all the stories for that month and talking about it that way. But we're not in a place to commit to that right now either. Maybe once I have I'll see how I feel. But
I mean, of course, we have to remember that we won't stop posting words each week. And I know that both of us want to make a deeper commitment to at least commenting and at least talking within the Discord about these stories that y'all write, because y'all do write great stories, and we've appreciated everything that y'all have done for this podcast ever since it sort of started. So we're going to continue to do that, and we are going to hopefully try and record once a month to sort of just put something out there. I just know for both of us where we are right now, we can't dedicate that time to it. Wrong place, wrong time.
So don't know when that once a month thing would start off if we decide to do that. I do want to say y'all have been so kind and encouraging. I know y'all can tell that we're going through shit because you guys go out of your way to show and tell us how much you appreciate the podcast, and that does feel really, really good. And I'm really glad that it's been something to that helped y'all out. Like we've consistently had at least 5 people every single week for years now, which is amazing. It's incredible. What's the math on it?
Even
over 1,000 stories.
Let's see. Yeah, for the last couple of years, 5 stories per week. Let's say 50 weeks. So 250 stories roughly for a year. So it's been at least 1,000 stories.
Yeah, and then in the beginning we had a lot too, as well. So regardless, I do want to say it has been extremely encouraging seeing y'all write your stories and pour out your appreciation, and we really, really appreciate that in turn. It's been like a really nice thing, and y'all have also made some wonderful stories. I loved reading the wholesome ones, including the one that we're going to be reading this week. They were good for pick-me-ups. So
definitely. But even though we might not be doing this as often as we used to, we will still have the do the right thing spirit in our hearts, and we will definitely still be doing the right thing. So hopefully y'all continue to do so also.
Yeah, when I get to settle into a place and like have less stuff going on with my emotions all the time, I definitely will be sitting down and doing, setting a timer and doing the right thing. Absolutely. So yeah, and hopefully I can share the stories with y'all when that happens. Yeah. Okay. I think that's all the bummer talk that we really need, right?
So we definitely need to pick up the mood a bit.
Yeah, and let's do that with our story this week. What are the words, and then who are we reading?
Yes. So the story for this week is by KomatoSoup with Convalescence, and the words for this week were margin, engine, revive, and lump.
As well as we'll be talking about the stories from last week, Sister, Curtain Wreck, and Amputate. But here is KomatoSoup's story, Convalescence. Sarah stared at where her arm ended in a lump. She raised the lump and then let the lump fall back onto the sheets. Life is always going to be just a bit shittier now, she said. You don't know that, said Kana. Really? In what way would life ever be improved from having no arm? Tell me, please. Kana didn't look up from her book. After a few seconds, she turned a page. I don't know. No? Then your little optimisms can go bite it. Kana turned another page. We might find out that there's some hidden magical system unbeknownst to us that is only accessible to people who only have one arm. Sarah stared blankly at her friend. Do you have any knowledge of such a magic system? Are you a part of it and trying to clue me in as much as you can without revealing the masquerade? Kana turned another page. No. Then once again, alternatively, there might be some alien dude that's really into one-armed chicks. Like, maybe it's really attractive to him and you're singled out for that reason. And it's not like a fetish thing, more like he likes you for your intrinsic you-ness, but starts noticing you and especially notices how gracefully you're treating your lack of arm. Sarah frowned. That still sounds like a fetish thing. I literally said it's not. I went into some detail about it. Yeah, but you did it in a really specific and directed way that makes it feel like it's definitely a fetish thing. This is your problem, Sarah. You don't trust people. Kana turned the page. It doesn't even have to be an alien, you know. It could be a being from a different dimension, or a demon. That wasn't the part I had an issue with. Okay, what if he's from like a dimension where everyone he knows only had one arm, but he's memory wiped, so he doesn't really know why there's this lingering subconscious attraction he has to your one arm. Sarah threw a pillow at her. You're doing this on purpose. Kana smiled at her from under her book. You won't be smiling once I get this mechanical arm fitted and throw that two-handed. I don't think throwing two-handed is necessarily better. Sure it is. You don't see pitchers throwing with both hands, do you? They're doing it wrong then. Evidently. Not putting their two-handedness to good use. Very ungrateful of them, agreed Kana. Sarah sighed. So, she said, how does this thing work anyways? Sarah poked the strange mechanical helmet at the foot of her bed. It calibrates your new mechanical arm to you, answered Kana. Yeah? Yep. It's pretty interesting, actually. You know that thing in movies where there's a rigorous montage of physio and stuff, and some person perseveres and regains more movement than the pessimistic diagnosis said they'd ever achieve? Sure. Well, this machine kind of simulates that for you. Kana tapped the cranial contraption. It emitted a dull, distressing whine. It basically simulates several quadrillion different, very determined to get better versions of you, takes those neural learnings, then copy-paste the average into your brain. So, after we're done with this, I'll be some kind of mech arm-wielding expert? Well, as much of an expert as several quadrillion versions of you are capable of being anyways. Slightly above average, then. Sounds about right. Sarah looked up at the ceiling, then let out a long breath. Well, might as well get started. Kana helped her fit the new arm to her stump. As the helmet was put into place, a large green screen projected out of her arm. A screen rendering a scene. Sarah stared as the hot demon gazed lovingly at her Sim's eyes as she grunted her way through some mechanical arm-related exercise. What the hell is this? I told you, said Kana, grinning beside her. The AI's engine simulates whatever it thinks will best motivate you to work at getting better at using your new prosthetic. Really? This is what the helmet thinks I'd respond to? Hot demon physio? Kana shrugged. Hey, if the AI says that's what you respond to, it's what you respond to. It is what it is. Sarah noticed there was a slider at the bottom margin of the interface. One projected slide out of an untold number. Oh my god, there's more! Sarah flipped through a few other simulated slices. In one, an amorphous blob of congealed jello gently guided her mechanical arm from behind as her sim worked at molding clay into a vase in front of her. Hey look, Kana reached over. You can expand the scene. Wait, don't... Sarah gasped as Glorbnock oozed into the minuscule seams of her arm. When he was fully immersed, it seemed as though her arm was aglow with a soft blue light. Then came one perfect, silent pulse. I feel whole, Sim Sarah whispered. Glorbnock gurgled contentedly. Working harder was worth it. Sarah closed the scene. Ugh. I know, agreed Kana. It's distressing how much you seem to respond to cliches. Sarah flipped through a few more simulated slices. One showed her garbed in knightly armor, training her mechanical limb to master the use of a sword that no hand of flesh and bone could master. "Hey, look! No love interest in this one," Sarah pointed out. The sword began talking in a husky male voice. "Is that sword negging you?" Kana asked. Sarah switched to a different slice, then another, and another. One saw her set against a caricature of a rich girl in some kind of mechanical arm-related contest of fitness. There was arm wrestling and some kind of grip pressure test that measured how well you could regulate specific force within narrow bands. The scene culminated in some kind of mechanical arm fencing that ended with her sim throwing a weighted lead glove in her rival's shocked face. A raucous cheering ensued from the crowd. "That probably has to do with some backstory you skipped," said Kana from beside her. She'd brought over some snacks and drinks. "I think the context makes it pretty clear it was some sort of dual posturing thing." "Yeah, that explains the glove, but why is it made of lead?" Sarah shrugged, flipping her way through a few more. "Do you know if I can keep some of these for later?" "I mean, sure, if you're willing to pay for storage." Sarah made a face. "I'm kidding, of course you can keep it. Look." Kana tossed over a pamphlet she'd been reading behind her book. "See? It comes as a part of the storage package included with the arm." "Oh, neat." Sarah flipped through a few more slices. "Glad to get something out of this." "And here you thought losing an arm would be a pure loss." Kana settled in beside her as they watched through more. "In a way, this is reassuring," said Kana. "How so?" Kana took her turn, flipping through slice after slice of embarrassing inanity. Inanity. "I mean, arm or not, this is definitive proof you are intrinsically, clearly, unabashedly the same corny old you." As they flipped through all of the various simulations, Sarah couldn't help but smile. There was at least one constant. In every slice, every permutation, before the aliens or body snatchers or whatever magical destinies came into play, the scene always started the same way. She and her friend, waiting in the same room. Kana gave her a look. "Why are you looking at me like that? You constipated or something?" Before Sarah could respond, the helmet emitted a sharp ding that Sarah associated with microwaves. "Looks like it's done," Kana said. "Try out your hand." Sarah raised her new hand toward her friend. She whirled her wrist, surprised by the comfortable ease of movement, before slowly articulating her open hand into a fist, sans one finger. Kana grinned. "See? Same old you for sure."
So yeah, I really do love how the story is very dialogue heavy. We get to get a deeper look into Kana and Sarah, and I really do enjoy a lot of the flow of of this because the style itself sort of ranges between this slightly colder tone to something that's a bit more warm when we're talking about these characters. But of course, I also enjoy the world building and the sci-fi aspect to this story. So, story is really effective, and I think it definitely hits all of the marks. It uses all of the words. So, really great story this week, KomatoSoup.
Yeah, I found it really wholesome. So obviously, the structure here is we have all these scenes, but interspersed, we have these interactions between these two
Yeah.
lovely characters, and I definitely, I could tell what was going on, especially by midway through, as she's learning to use this mechanical arm, and then she's getting the motivation to use the arm from her love interest that's right there, and it's written in a way that there's definitely a chemistry between the two characters. I feel. How do you
Definitely.
think they accomplish that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest reasons why you can clearly tell that there is chemistry between these characters is due to it being so dialogue heavy, and how there's a certain sense of delicateness you can tell being between them. There's this like deep care that is very palpable throughout, and I think it's because these characters have been brought to life through their dialogue. And I really do like the bits on how like using this arm for someone else or comes into play, and we can see that even though this is like a roadblock milestone within both of their lives, that together they can sort of step past this and come together even more so. Because I don't know, did you pick up on what their relationship was?
I had the feeling by the end that they were friends, but there's definitely just an extremely strong bond there, and that it could be romantic,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't necessarily. Yeah, it wasn't. It was in that middle ground of just like really, really caring for each other. I think there wasn't like a lot of signals of any sort of sexual or like romantic like longing between them, um, and that's totally okay. I always assume, the pendulum swings, and anytime girls are very friendly with each other, I'm like, oh, they should be lesbians, they should date. But now this is, I think, in a place where it's just it's a very, very close friendship that like could be romantic, but that's not what's important in this scene. This is just mostly about how they're like best friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, overall, I just really dug it. I think that the strongest part here is this connection beyond the world building, beyond the slight sci-fi aspect to this. I think the strongest point is just sort of seeing how these characters grow and how they progress together, which I really liked. And yeah, like as you said when you were first describing this story, it is very uplifting. You know, there's just this really great sense of connection and community within this piece that I really love, and I love reading it for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so the structure, I think, I think the way that it's conveyed is with these characters making fun of each other, and being annoying with each
Mm-hmm.
other. I think that's kind of how like most bonds are made. I don't know why it is that that's how it is, but it seems to me like most friendships and connections, including like between humans and non-humans, like pets, is oftentimes just
Yeah.
like annoyance and care and just like accepting even after that annoyance. And obviously there's like a really big range of ways that people do that, but the whole, I mean, I think we've talked about this before, but the whole like how to influence people, and or how to win friends and influence people or whatever, and it's like make people do favors
Mm-hmm.
for you, um or ask people to do favors for you. And yeah, I think it's that sort of thing of just like causing a small hardship and then seeing that they are taking it on for you because they like you that way. um
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I so the little scenes that go play while Sarah is learning how to use the arm, I think were really fun, particularly when we go from the hot demon, which we were already primed for, into an amorphous blob
Nice.
congealed jello on her arm. Yeah, that was great. This is helping her make something out of clay. That was great. Yeah, it's a very good time. I do want to experience all these cliche stories. I love them.
Yeah. Same, same. But cool. All right. I think that's all I have to say on this story. It was a great ride, and it definitely uplifted my spirits this morning because I was definitely not feeling too great. But after reading this, it just, I don't know, it wakened up my heart after reading it,
Hmm.
which I really appreciated.
Yeah, of
But yeah.
course.
Mhm.
All
But
right,
cool.
so we're going to be going through and talking about the stories from both weeks. The ones that were paired stories, like part of a series, I think we'll be talking about together. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, cool. So We will be talking about some of these stories where the writer wrote multiple entries of it over the course of multiple weeks. We're going to talk about those in larger blocks. So, first up, we will be talking about Just Stand 8460's Lightning in a Bottle.
Yeah, so there's two entries here. One is Lightning in a Bottle the first week, and then the next entry, The Coming Storm. This is the one with the talking bird and the seer. Well, actually, so we get introduced our first character's sister, the one that he is chasing and trying to find, who has seen the future. And we're getting a lot more perspective switching now. We're switching between mostly the little seer girl as well as the general, who's the antagonist here, and then jumping back into the bird's perspective in the last one, which is interesting, just like of seeing the main character through that first person or second or third person minor character viewpoint of Goodfeather. But basically, General's trying to find the little seer girl, being told to by his own witch. Doesn't find her in the first chapter, but does in the second one. And we kind of just have started escalating into our climax of the story as Goodfeather and the boy are about to arrive on the scene as well.
Yeah. So I just want to take a moment to really talk about the pros here. I'm currently looking at the second entry of it, Lightning in a Bottle, the first week, and I think the first section it feels a lot like flavor text, but it is also sort of getting us into the scene very well, using these very strong words: ember, skull, forms, overhead, like all of these words are sort of working in a tandem to sort of build out this scene. And I think that this style and flow is carried out throughout all of these, and I really enjoy reading it because it is a style that lends itself to really strong imagery, which of course is always a great thing. Story wise, I am really liking where the story is going. The changing in perspective was a little jarring for me, but I also love how. Well, I just also love the choice of doing that because I know switching from a first person to a third person to a different first person can get so confusing writer side, and it can also really confuse your reader. But I think within this piece, the lines between perspectives were drawn strong enough to where I'm not lost when we are jumping to a different perspective to get additional information that was missing from that first perspective. So, I mean, overall, I just think that this is a really great. It's a really great piece technically. It's doing like a lot of things that I really, really love. So overall, really great job. Loved reading it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any first person in here. I think I just misspoke when I said that earlier.
Well, changing of perspective.
Yeah, from the different characters. Yeah, definitely the imagery. I think it just like how the action is conveyed. I think is effective as well. And I think there's a good balance between that and the dialogue conveying those emotions of these characters. I definitely got the sense that the general is starting to panic and worry. Yeah. In that sense of like he doesn't want to believe this witch, but clearly there's something going on here, and he's just suspicious and stuff. And also the sort of subplots that are forming, like in how the general soldiers are starting to be violent in their own way, and they're more violent than soldiers normally are. But yeah, no, completely agree. It's definitely an enjoyable journey, and I'm looking forward to the climax of the story, even though we probably won't be talking about it on the podcast anytime soon.
But I'll definitely read it with bated breath. But all right. The next story is by Walker by Faith with The Iron Eagle.
Yeah, so we have two parts here. One, the Iron Eagle, the superhero, the cocky superhero, is at a conference when this little girl accuses him of killing her parents as part of fighting a supervillain, and then she pulls out a gun and tries to kill him, and Iron Eagle responds by decapitating her. Which I mean, I
Nice.
get it, but nice. You're right. Um, but then the second part, and this was like a plan by the general who hates the Iron Eagle because he can't be controlled, to tank the Iron Eagle's sort of uh, ratings and such. And then they have a conference with him, and by the end, ambush him and take his powers away.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I really do love how this story has built over these couple of entries. Of course, Walker by Faith has a really great style and a really good sensibility about stories. So I really do enjoy how this unfolded from the personal to much larger. The action within this was handled really well. I wasn't really confused, especially with so much going on. I know it's real easy for your action to get a bit muddied and maybe not be as evocative of what's actually happening, but this one was pretty on the mark for a good portion of it. And I really came to really care about Maggie. Spending so much time with her, I just really enjoy the timidness that she holds while also still, being pretty strong. So great job overall.
Yeah, the murderous kid. Yeah, there's a good escalation of the issue that gets presented there, and I think we definitely get more and more tired of Iron Eagle and his cockiness as we go through these entries. Definitely by the end, and he's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like panically trying to hold on to his powers, saying, "You're America, you got to fix this." And I definitely
Yeah,
was like,
but it's also
"Okay, I'm
funny
ready for this
too.
guy to lose all his powers. That's fine with me. Go, General, I guess."
Mm-hmm.
Go brave
Go
Ben.
General, yeah. Well, I also liked the comedy that's coming from Iron Eagle, just like seeing this overly cocky figure, um, and especially since we also got to see the real Iron Eagle in the previous entry about his own personal struggles and his own imposter syndrome. That seeing him further, it's like, oh, okay, so I get this character, but he's just acting like an ass.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, really, really, really great, sort of adding those layers to these characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Who's next?
Yep. So the next story is by Nick Yu with Black Skies and Red Earth.
So in this entry, we have, I think, just in short, we have a firefighting superhero with like ice powers and a bit of
Mm-hmm.
psychic abilities as well, going through a burning building and trying to find and save people, but not being able to save everyone. I think he's able to save two people. Jumping out of a building and wanting to rush back in, but he's told not to as the building collapses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I this is a really good. I really enjoyed reading this story. I enjoy a lot of the action within this. I sort of felt that tension within the prose. I felt sorry for the people that he couldn't save. I do notice that there is this repetition of I, and I do want to ask you how you feel about it.
Mm,
But I think it's fairly interesting. Just this I
mm-hmm.
just
Sure.
ran. I was tough. I rushed, and it does sort of create this like claustrophobic sense with this character,
Mm-hmm.
since we're sort of stuck within this own character's mind, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is really interesting, especially when I know I've always been taught to shy away from doing something like this. To
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
when it
It
comes
seems
to
very
like using
intentional.
exactly, exactly. And I think that's why I find it so interesting, because it's sort of rebelling against the main canon, the like meta of writing well, to sort of create this feeling within the reader. So I think that that's pretty effective. But how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm looking through and trying to sort of see the patterns there. Um, I'm not quite able to identify, but I think maybe you might be right that it does create a sort of claustrophobic sense of just. I think it definitely increases a bit of like a sense of confusion as we sort
Yes.
of keep centering on this character rather than sort of viewing the situation directly. Rather than um, uh, like I couldn't even feel her presence. She was burned bad and had a lot of smoke inhalation. It could have been her presence was weak. I could barely feel it, right? And the fact that we just keep returning to the eye sort of like, yeah, it increases a sort of sense of panic, I think.
Yes, it really does. I think you said something pretty strong about how since it's always centering around the main character, we don't get to see what else is happening, which I feel is sort of mimicking the feeling of being in a burning building. Since you can't really see much, you're sort of your vision is closed off. It feels very claustrophobic. So I think that it was a effective tool. I wonder, like, I'm just wondering about how other people might take it, because I know to
Mm-hmm.
some the repetition of I over and like over, some might say that it's on par with like lesser writing, but at the same time I think that it's used here purposefully, and because it is used purposefully, it is a tool, and I think that this tool has been used well within this story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely would be interested in seeing what effect other people interpret that choice to have,
Mm-hmm.
to intentionally repeat the I rather than having the varied sentence structure. Not that there isn't some variation, there definitely is. We switch often from the I action sentences to a sentence about the surroundings without a subject at all, just the object.
Yeah.
And that definitely increases the sense of urgency because there is no subject there at all. There's just this
Just
collapsing
I.
building. Yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
all right, who's the next story?
Yeah, so the next story is by Ace of Sword with Holding Out for a Hero.
So this is the one that I think is technically one of those entries with two parts as well, but they're very different. So I
Mm.
think we'll address them pretty separately. So the first one, this hero, this champion, gets blasted by gets caught in a blast and thrown away from this woman who is now possessed by her goddess, who's the goddess that the champion is for. So at first we're like, oh, is this like a fight? Is this like what's going on here? This is we're kind of ready to start rooting for the hero. But then the goddess speaks and says that like he was allowed to sleep with priestesses. He was allowed to have she wasn't like puritanical, but he made advances on this priestess that was not consenting, and because of that, she takes away
Yeah.
all of his power. And I thought that was a really great, um, yeah, just like a I haven't seen that sort of situation presented before in this sort of fiction. And if we made a story last week, it was the one that I wanted to read,
Mm-hmm.
or made an
Yeah,
episode last week I wanted to read.
this is the one that you want to read. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think I also agree on that front. Like, this is a really great and effective story. And I like how this situation was handled. It wasn't terribly visceral, I don't think, but at the same time, it got the point across, and it gives reason as to why Sister Bale would take his power away. And yeah, this overall it's very effective. It's using a lot of this evocative language that sort of takes my mind to a Catholic esque cathedral like setting, which I really like, and I like how were able to really sit in this place and moment for the duration of this story. So really effective. I really liked it.
Yeah, and there's particularly once we get into the next entry, there's this implication of like it was pretty significant that she took it away. She like does need a champion. It's not like, she's there's a prophecy and an invasion going on, but it's just gonna have to be with another champion because this guy's just not good enough.
Yeah, he just ain't cutting it apparently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but all right, cool. I think then we can lead into the next entry, the part 2,
Mm-hmm.
which is also by Ace of Sword with Where Are All the Gods?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so here we really expand the scope and we go into that goddess's perspective. And there's just
Mm-hmm.
this fascinating image being built of this like magical, titanic, extremely powerful drill that is sort of drilling into her metaphorical skin. Um, and it is using her own like energy that would like destroy it into drilling more.
Yeah.
And just generally, yeah, there's a sense of it being titanic, and it's something extremely tiny for her. Um, but there are three other gods. One is nearly dead already, basically a corpse.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is suffering a lot, and then the last one is hasn't been gotten to like she has. And yeah, it's definitely pretty dire for these gods who seem so powerful but can't really defend themselves. And anyway, the decision she's making here is trying to find another champion, choosing to bless a generation of children, but also
Mm-hmm.
a girl that nearly dies smashing an evil automaton.
Yeah. So yeah, this story, as you said, does really widen the scope, and I think that is definitely due to the switching of these pros to talk about these like larger ones. Like there's this line really early on. Across the universe, Allen could hear Zun veil of twilight stifling his pain, and like just lines like that are sprinkled throughout that are evocative of these sort of larger than life, non tangible concepts, which I think works really well when we are talking about gods. I do like how, even though we are talking about all of this larger stuff, we are sort of we maintain our focus on this main character and her intentions, and due to her choices, we then see all like a whole slew of consequences possibly spilling out from that. So I really like this entry because of its effect on the wider story, and of course the pros are on point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The grand scope, the grand god-like scope of it is definitely felt with how these are described. I particularly liked the sort of like, I don't know, the Titanic. Um, I don't know, like with the one god that's like almost a corpse already, builder of Lodal or Iodal, I think, builder of builders
Mm-hmm.
is not dead, almost a corpse. I'm just picturing him just being like, just like a gigantic being, just like hollowed out. And it sounds like gross and sad, and but also just like fascinating. What's interesting here is that we kind of don't have any idea like why they're doing this. Why are these gods trying to be or being devoured basically by these
Mm-hmm.
automatons? And definitely, yeah, that mystery that is being left there felt natural. And I was interested. I was interested in figuring out what the hell these porcelain faced automatons are.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I'm looking forward to seeing what a next entry would have for this story. Cool. But all right. Up next is by Nick Yu with Reign of Crunchy.
Yeah, so interesting. Um, I don't know, the name of this villain is interesting. But we have these two characters who are streaming, But they also sound like they're sort of like in a underground like war sort of radio. That's sort of the style that it's taking place. The fact that it's both like underground and during a wartime, but also they're streaming it like gamers. But apparently they are flying a sci-fi slash fantasy technomancy monster truck through the air with drones as well, um, over this territory where this some sort of evil, powerful being named Crunchy has taken over. They're able to drop off some care packages and get away. And in that moment, they sort of can't focus on streaming because they're so terrified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I like the tone of this story. It's sort of there's weight to it, but of course there's this slight sense of levity sprinkled throughout. I think that the pros are really solid. This guy Cody, I think, is hilarious personally.
Sure.
Yeah, in like a self-serious way. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I overall just really like this story. It's playing with a lot of different characters, and is really quickly building this superhero world, which I think is really cool, and it's effective, especially building it so quick and trying to get to a character changing moment really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely like the sort of tension that's being built between these two streamers. There's like definitely, I don't know, kind of get a sense they almost just like straight up don't like each other.
Yeah, and I do like this sort of budding rivalry, and I am definitely looking forward to seeing where it goes from here. We've set up everything, we set up the world, set up the characters. So I'm eager to see how this status quo will be disrupted later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it works as its own little thing, just a little dip into this world of magic streamers and stuff.
Yeah.
It definitely sets up the world building questions, but yeah, I think it functions to do uh, what it set out to do, which is sort of um, I think having these streamers sort of confront like actual danger and having to drop their act even just for a second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So really great entry. But all right. Our next story is by Qatt with Superhuman Painter. This is from a couple of weeks ago, where the words are bland, fashion, quaint, and painter.
Quat and Nick to I think we recorded like a day early or something, and so their stories came in just afterwards, basically. But we wanted to get to them now because there's no reason why we have to miss those. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so we have this painter going in and sort of uh, uh, judging this entire place because it's owned by a hero who clearly like can afford better than what they have. Um, and we get revealed at the end that this is Superman, and just I think like the mystery that we sort of build there, of just like yeah, there's just like a normal interaction between um, Superman and just like a normal painter because he's not going to paint it himself. He's Superman.
Yeah, exactly. um, but yeah, this story is a really nice one. It carries this very light tone to it. It's funny while also still having some really strong prose. I love how we seem to be jumping back and forth into this main character's head, so we get to understand a bit more about them, how they're focused, like almost obsessed with paint, uh, is is a really nice touch to this character. And yeah, overall, it was a really interesting read that made me laugh a couple times. So really great job,
Mm-hmm.
Glad.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we are getting new writers even this close to us. Getting all frazzled and stuff. So I think that's nice.
Yeah, exactly. And our last story for this week is by Nick to You with The Secret Lives of Superheroes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is just like a nice little interaction. We have just a group of, I think they're all women superheroes, climbing into their lair that they're just setting up. They barely even have office supplies. um, and they all have these like fun names. I think kind of, I don't know, there feels like there's a theme, even though there's kind of not. Like Centipede, Dragon Moth, uh,
Dogpile.
Dogpile. Yeah, it was, I think their older name, but yeah, there's just a lot of implications of just like, yeah, these are sort of getting started. They're like in between sort of phases. um and they just kind of shoot the shit a little bit, and we get to know a bit of the
Mm-hmm.
personalities. um and yeah, it's just a nice little interaction.
Yeah, this is definitely the like slice of life superhero comedy I've been waiting for. Because yeah, it just carries this really nice light tone while also, of course, doing some like world building. We are hit with all these very heavily stylized and comedic names, so the story is sort of asking us to not take it too seriously as we go through and just hear them shoot the shit, talk about the old days. Yeah, I don't know. This seems like a really great scene within a larger story. But again, I really like how the story is sort of self-contained and allows us to not only get to know these characters, but begs us to just enjoy reading it, which I really liked.
Yeah, the interactions between all of them are comfortable. I think there's a lot of characters in here, so it's kind of hard to keep track, but that's just how it goes, I think. um
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this story may have worked basically just as well if one or two of them had been combined.
Yeah.
But I also want to say I do love the ending line. Just like it's a nice little just like punchline. Because after all of this, banter going back and forth, there's just like a awkward pause, and then nice weather we've been having. Dragon Moth said, and then Dog Pal going, "What has been asked? What are you talking about?" Which is
Mm-hmm.
shooting down the small talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, really, really great story. But all right, I think it's high time to say thank you to everyone who did leave a story. So thank you very much to Just Stan 8460, Ace of Sword, Nick to You, KomatoSoup, Walker by Faith, and Quat. And we would also like to say thank you to everyone who did leave comments. Leaving comments not only under your own story, but under someone else's can condense all of your own thoughts on your stories for other to read, but you're also providing someone else with crucial feedback that can only improve them and you as writers. So thank you very much to Justin 8460, Ace of Sword, Walker by Faith, Nick to You, and KomatoSoup. Thank you so much for leaving comments.
Yeah, there has been some really nice discussion for the last while between everyone, and I've always really, really appreciated seeing that. And obviously, I think we should say thank you to everyone else who's ever submitted the story to do the right thing. I really hope we are
Yeah.
able to continue this. But regardless, it's been just like really fucking awesome to uh,
Yeah.
get so many participating people and know that we're as inspiring writers and seeing y'all improve. It's actually, that definitely has been my favorite part, just the massive improvements we've seen from writers from their first stories submitted to the podcast up to their most recent ones. And we've had a lot of new writers over time, which has also been really, really nice. But also I just want to like, there's several people that like have been writing the whole time, or we would have writers that wrote years ago and then they left for like a year, but then they came back again for a story here and there, and I think that was really, really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I
So
mean, it's this whole thing has definitely been the highlight of my weeks. Definitely seeing y'all's stories, seeing y'all's improvement, and also just seeing how much y'all are willing to engage with the podcast and how much joy it seemed to have given y'all is definitely the biggest reason why we kept doing the podcast for as long as we
mhm.
have. And yeah, the hope is that we will definitely still be able to read your stories. We'll definitely still be able to comment under your stories. So keep doing the right thing.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, and we'll hope to give you all encouragement that way. If anyone has like done something with the writing that they got on Do the Right Thing, I think now would be a great time to show us. We would really appreciate that. Like if you got it published somewhere, or just you went back and revised something, we would love for
Mm-hmm.
y'all to send that in. So, but okay, Jarvis, what are the final words that we are leaving off as we take this hiatus, indefinite hiatus from Do the Right Thing? Let's make
Yeah,
sure they're good.
yeah. So yeah, we have to make sure that they're really good ones. Well, the first word is right. Second one is visual, soak, and perceive.
Well, okay, that's nice. I wait, is it right or right? I want it to be right.
Yes, it is right.
Okay.
WRIT.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, that's actually kind of nice. We did use a random word generator, as we always do. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so one of the words is writing. This thing that you guys have been doing this entire time. So that's kind of cool. Um, yeah,
Nice.
I don't know if we really have to define writing. I guess if you want to define writing, you can go back to any of our episodes before now.
Yeah,
Um,
including
mhm,
this one.
including this one.
Um,
All right,
mm-hmm,
visual, which is sort of taking an object of what you can see at a given moment. I think
mm-hmm,
there is a trope with like in the military saying that they need a visual on the target or whatever. Um, and obviously, like in a movie or something, that's the visuals that you're seeing. Just in general, when you see a thing, that's a visual.
that is official.
hmm
Mm-hmm. And then
So,
up next is perceive.
or soak, right?
Soak, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So to soak something is to place it in a liquid and then just let the liquid be absorbed over time. So you can just soak in bathwater. What are some other like particular soaks that you can do? There's plenty.
Uh,
Um,
yeah, you can soak a tea bag.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think, or steep, I think is the
Mm.
proper word for it, but soak would still work. Just
Steep,
like
yes,
you
yeah,
can, I think you could technically soak a steak in a marinade, but I'm pretty sure the correct word is marinate. So,
marinated,
uh,
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, soak can
Um,
be used to describe anything that is submerged in some liquid.
mhm. And then perceive, which is to see something. So obviously a little bit of a theme going on here with visuals and perception. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
to see something, to take it into your visual of the world.
Nice,
All right,
nice. So
Jarvis,
tell me,
what's
what
your most
story?
mini
Oh,
story of all time that you have
my most
written?
mini story.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as I soak in my bathtub with and perceive the shower head raining down on me, I catch a mental visual of all the good times, all the podcasts, and all the
Oh.
stories that has amazingly graced my life. And as
Mm-hmm.
I sit back with a cool glass of some liquid, I am glad that I was able to do the right thing.
Okay. You know you're supposed to wait to say that until I do my story.
Well, yeah, but I used right, didn't I?
Yes, you did. Yeah, do you want to put your story at the end?
We can, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Unless if you have a better
No,
closer, which I
no.
think you probably do.
Oh, I don't. So there was a sponge that was sentient, and it was soaking with all the dishes. For some, they left they didn't perceive that the sponge was in the dishes with the in the water, and it was gross. And then when the sponge went home because that was its day job, and it went to write because that was its hobby. It the paper got all wet. Actually, no, it was on a laptop, and it got the laptop wet, and then the screen, like visuals were, it was all glitchy because it got water. It got water in it. That's my story. Thank you.
Wow, that's a sad story. Yeah.
Thank you.
If that sponge was a bit smarter when it came to their writing, I don't think they would have used a laptop, because I've always felt that using pen and paper is probably the right thing to do.
Better for the environment.
Better, much better.
Okay. Bye. I had a good time. I'll miss you.
Yeah.
Kisses.
I will miss y'all too. Big hug.
Big
RXD plus ratio.